Hello everybody, this is TipTopMTG here today with another Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at Kaldheim, and I'm going to be giving you my perspective on it as a mostly MTG Arena player. Alright, so let's talk about Kaldheim, the world of Vikings, gods, and modal double-face cards. Overall, it's been a very positive experience for me, and actually going into it, I was not necessarily looking forward to it. I started playing Magic actually fairly recently, along the release of Ixalan, and, you know, I was in and out of Magic, and I really started playing the game a lot with the release of Guilds of Ravnica, and following that was Ravnica Allegiance, which was one of the most disappointing set releases since I have been playing the game. And then I would say the second for me, and obviously this is going to be different for everyone, Theros Beyond Death was another disappointing release. And when I say disappointing, I don't mean they were bad sets at any way. You know, some of them had problematic cards like Uro in Theros, but they just weren't necessarily interesting to me. For me, monocolor matters and, you know, the escape mechanic, all of that really just wasn't my thing. And if it was your thing, hey, that's great. But the past two, you know, winter sets have felt very, very safe to me. And I've noticed this kind of trend. Normally, the fall set is a little bit more powerful in order to try and draw people in after rotation to continue playing. So they're like, ooh, there's cool stuff to play. Followed by a safer winter set, followed by kind of an insane, I guess that would be the spring set. We see this with War of the Spark and Ikoria both being very complex and very interesting. So, you know, going into this, I'm just going to start by saying I had very low expectations. But I think that it was done very, very well. There's a lot of stuff for everybody. There are some sets that I feel like have a lot of focus in certain areas, and some players are definitely going to love it. But I feel like they implemented the right amount of stuff that almost any kind of player could be happy. I mean, if we're just breaking it down in terms of the basic archetypes, things like Control got decent pieces, especially with things like Doomscar. Rush probably got the, you know, the shorter end of the stick, but it still got a couple new pieces like Arnie Broken Brow, and the whole boast mechanic is very Rush-centric. In terms of like mid-range, we got a lot of awesome just cards that can add to that, and so it feels fairly balanced that way. But if we're also talking about like other things, they added a decent amount of janky cards that can do really awesome combo-y things, and those are honestly my favorite. If you've been watching my channel, you'll know some of my favorite cards are the ones that are really bad, but in combination with other cards, they are really, really fun to play. And so they gave us a lot of those. We had we had a Nexus that kind of adds all creature types to all creatures, and you know, stuff like that. The World Tree. I'm stumbling over my words here. Overall, a lot of really fun stuff, but we also got some much more powerful cards for people who like that, with Doomscar, and even the whole Foretell mechanic seems really, really good. And on top of that, outside of maybe a couple cards, like most of the mechanics are pretty interesting and unique. I mean, yes, Boast is kind of just another version of Raid, but I think that it's done in an interesting way, and I think the modal double face cards are also more interesting than they were in Zendikar. So overall, almost every aspect of the set to me is very, very interesting. We have interesting card design, interesting mechanics. The modal double face cards are definitely more interesting with them not just being lands. And I think that they are a lot more like normal spells than the Zendikar ones, where Zendikar you were probably taking out lands out of your decks instead of other spells. So yeah, I just overall really enjoyed it. But that doesn't mean it was perfect. First off, one other thing I'm going to add. I loved the tribal part. I don't think every set should be tribal based, and you know, we've had a couple tribal based sets, and it looks like Strixhaven is obviously going to be based around wizards, and I could not imagine a D&D set without tribes being a major theme. And then we're moving into Innistrad werewolves and Innistrad vampires, so it really, really looks like this year is going to be a tribal year. And I think starting that off with changelings is a little bit scary, but just keep that in mind that if you thought, you know, this was a lot of tribal, I'm expecting a lot more. But I think that the fact that there were so many tribals and then they were bound by this like changeling glue, I thought that was also very interesting. So like I was saying, lots of interesting parts to the set. Now, it wasn't perfect. For instance, it's not my favorite limited environment. Things like Thornveld Drain have a pretty fun limited environment, but the issue with, Kaldheim is that it is that tribal kind of thing, and I find myself often drafting the tribes, which is completely fine, but sometimes it feels a little bit more like defined as to what I'm going to draft, and it seems a little bit less handmade. It's like, oh, this is in my tribe, or my creature type, I am going to pick it. So outside of those few little things, draft, not my favorite, but it also isn't the worst I've played. Definitely better than something like a core set. In terms of broken cards, in addition, there really isn't anything. Now, again, I play from the perspective of a standard, brawl, and historic player. Tybalt's trickery is giving people some problems out there, but honestly, in the long run, I really don't see it being a big problem. It'll probably be another Gyruda from Ikoria, where it's this big combo-y deck that people realize just fails too much. Obviously, it could end up being an issue, but it's not a card that is just so broken. It's just one that has some interesting applications, and we'll have to see what it turns out to be. But there, that deck, you essentially play it, and there's like a 25% chance that you get it going, and it is an overall an amazing deck. And so looking at the card list, there are only a couple cards that I would consider very, very powerful, and I don't know if any of them are really that broken. I think they do interesting things, and again, I think they're powerful, but of course there needs to be powerful cards, because the fact that powerful cards exist will always happen. If you just make them not powerful cards, then the next tier down will be now the new powerful cards. And I'd rather have interesting effects, which most of them do. In terms of the lore and story, it's nice to see that we're back to web fiction. The trailer, which just yesterday they released an extended cut of, was kind of lacking, but those aren't necessarily things that a lot of players care about. And one thing that players do care about a little bit more is the rollout of it on MTG Arena. I talk about this with most set reviews. Honestly, it was pretty good. In the past, set reviews have been some of the buggiest releases ever, and when you add the fact that they're also adding support for mobile, I was expecting this to be a bug fest, and honestly, it has been one of the smoothest releases, not just smoothest set releases, one of the smoothest MTG Arena releases in a while, and I think that is a very, very good sign as to the game as a whole. But that's not necessarily what this video is about. This video is about Kaldheim, and honestly, some of my favorite parts of it, and this is one thing I'm going to add on here, my favorite parts of the set is Foretell and the legendary creatures. I think the legendary creatures were done so well that they're all so different. I mean, there are only a few legendary creatures that I would consider lame, and of course, this is coming from Brawl player. I do play Commander as well, but mostly Brawl. I think that there are just really interesting effects that do things that we've already seen, but in a little bit of a different way. So yeah, I think the legendaries and Foretell are both really interesting parts. And honestly, that's kind of what I would consider this whole set. Really interesting. We've had sets in the past that were really powerful, but not interesting to me at all. And we've had sets in the past that were really interesting, but really underpowered. And I think Kaldheim hits that perfect balance. This video has been a little sporadic, but I really just want to get that point across. Kaldheim is interesting, and that is how I would describe it. It is not necessarily the most unique set. We've had sets where the big thing is tribal, but the way it does it is a little bit different, and the mechanics surrounding it are also really, really fun. So in terms of, if I were to rate this set, I would say it's one of the better sets that's been released. I would probably put it above Zendikar Rising, just because Zendikar Rising had that same tribal theme, but it was kind of a weird tribal theme. It was, you want not the same tribe, and that is technically a more interesting way to do it. I just felt that it led to a lot of cards that just didn't fit in any decks. But I think Kaldheim will just add a nice variety of new cards to the format. Either way, guys, I want to know what you guys think about Kaldheim in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to see more awesome content like this, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.